So we're going to start with an oldie but a goodie. Now, this video is from a few years ago of a professor who is an anarcho-primitivist, which should be enough to like deride him, right? Like you should automatically hate him just from being an anprim. This is someone that is very upset that like environmentalism focuses on technology instead of the destruction of technology. And yet that's not why this person's famous. This person is actually famous for doing this little video and a few other things that he said, because he happens to believe that men shouldn't be in women's spaces. Or let me rephrase that: transgender male to females shouldn't be in women's spaces. You've never heard of an anprim? Think anarchism, but instead of like coming together for the collective, like the mutualists all the way over to the ancoms, or like, you know, us, like right-wing anarchists, you know, believing in like free market and private property and like the freedom to do things without the state. Think Return to Monk S. Like, go back into the woods and like we must destroy technology because the technology will own us.
I mean, if that totes your goat spasty, I mean, happy for you.
Now, this is kind of the kind of where I want to start.
Violation, personally, I wouldn't have it.
Have you seen this before, Mark?
Have not.
So this is preceding him. Basically, well, sorry, this is after him basically telling his classroom, he's a professor, that
of course,
that anarchism and the left and leftism has a lot of issues with pedophilia. And this is the response that he got.
Long correlation between anarchism and pedophilia and support for pedophilia.
Give me just 1 second. Let me up this volume for a second and let's go.
Oh, wait. That's a beautiful line. Thank you so much for asking. How about something?
All right, so Clayton Bigsby would like to lose his mod privileges, I see. Are we done?
Oh, wait. That's a beautiful line. Thank you so much for asking. How about something relevant? I've been talking about rape culture all day, and pedophilia and the support of pedophilia is not rape culture? Actually, it seems...
he's talking about rape culture, and then they're like, can we talk about something relevant? Oh, it's about to get wild.
No,
you're acting like this is a spurious connection. So we're going to play Jeopardy. We're going to play Queer Theory. We're going to play Queer Theory Pedophilia Jeopardy. Okay, answer. Commonly called the godfather of queer theory. Who is Foucault?
Yeah, oh yeah. It gets worse, trust.
Who is Foucault? I got it. Okay, 100 points. Foucault. Another way to ask this is, who argued, no, I guess the answer would be, argued for the eradication of age of consent laws as in down to infants?
Who is Foucault?
Thank you.
Okay, next one.
I feel so confident right now.
It was like, who's Foucault? I know this one. Real imprims do not wear clothes and eat raw meat.
The author of the founding document of queer theory. Who is Gayle Ruben?
I do like that there's people brave enough in the class to just be like, yeah, I'll answer. I don't care.
Right. Oh, but what did Gayle Ruben say?
Percentage. No, the answer is 50%. Question is?
The amount in that article that was a defense of pedophilia, specifically, quote, boy lovers, so men who fuck boys.
Oh. And since you're not believing me, quote, this is in the founding document.
So this is 1984 Thinking Sex, which we're going to look at here in a minute.
Of queer theory. Like communists and homosexuals in the 1950s, Boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders of their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. That's in the founding document of queer theory. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm using facts. A thousand apologies. One must never.
Why is the clapping 10 times louder than his fucking voice?
Facts in the way. Oh,
Yeah, he had a microphone. You think it would be him being louder?
Fucking soft speaking ass bitches. So that's why these people be asking me what the AOC should be and why this Foucault, or however you spell his name, Facault. That's how you spell his name. It's French.
She also
Foucault.
It might be. I don't know. I'm terrible at spelling. Mark would know better than I would.
compared, by the way, she compared pedophilia. She compared pedophilia to a preference for spicy food. The thing is, I have never heard of anyone who has to have years of therapy because they ate hot and sour soup. Okay, so up to 200. Now it is pedophilia and queer theory for 300. That would be author of Macho Sluts. Author of Macho Sluts and Public Sex. Pat Califia.
Derrick Jensen is an eco-fascist.
Wait. What was it somebody said? Stay relevant.
She called him an eco-fascist.
Okay, let's talk about Pat Califia.
Why don't you respond? Because you can't respond.
Okay, here's something from one of Pat Califia's books. You know, it's really interesting. It's really interesting that when I actually start talking about the relationship between queer theory and anarchism and pedophilia, that it becomes, they really want to shut me up now. Okay, so here's Pat Califia. Pat Califia. Oh, wait, just a second. I was accused of homophobia because I'm against pedophilia. Who is it who actually makes the connections between that?
Yeah. I'm a homophobe because I don't like pedophilia. So gay people are pedophiles then.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, you saw this again with the attacks against groomers.
Yeah.
Okay, here's something by Pat Califia. Pat Califia has written, any child old enough to decide whether or not she or he wants to eat spinach, play with trucks, or wear shoes is old enough to decide whether or not she wants to run around naked in the sun, masturbate, sit in someone's lap, or engage in sexual activity, by which she does not mean play doctor, she means with adults. And she's very clear about that because she also says that pedophiles should be more and not less invested in children's lives. Okay, so we're at 300.
Yeah, helicopters. But boys, it's we're just getting started. Like if you don't have a strong stomach, like I mean, a lot of this is actually going to be very academic and very dry. So I don't know that you necessarily need a strong stomach. I think you'll be all right for most of this, but some of this is going to piss you off.
400
I love the
is
National Association of Marlon Brando lookalikes, Clayton.
invested in children's lives. Okay, so we're at 300. 400 is the most famous queer theorist of today. Answer. No, it is not Judith Butler. It's who is Judith Butler?
The fact that he's able to be comedic here while they're just like calling him a transphobe and a homophobe and screaming at him and is hilarious.
The lion cares not for the opinions of sheep.
Well, not only that, but he's a fucking, like many are saying, he's a cringe Lord Amprim. So like he's kind of used to derision.
Okay, Judith Butler is the most famous queer theorist of the day.
We see you, all of you supporters here, who do not care about trans people's lives. Every person here supporting their
Pause. We see you. Isn't that
Yes.
a creepy phrase?
Well, I think it's more creepy is the connection between look at queer theory and its association with pedophilia, right? And their response is, how dare you question our movement and how dare you question pedophilia, you fucking transphobe.
Oh, so interesting. Like it's just a logical jump to go like, wait, so if I hate pedophiles, I hate these other groups under your banner. So that means you're all one.
Well, no, it means that they're unquestioning in their undying loyalty to gender and queer theory.
No, I'm just saying it is a logical jump for people to make just when you're just like, yeah, I think pedophiles should be jailed. Like, well, you're a homophobe. Then like, oh, okay, then you mean homosexuals are also pedophiles.
Right, like I understand that connection, but like what I mean is that they're not reacting to like that, right? Like that's not the logic that they're going through. The logic.
No, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people hearing this. That's a logical assumption to get.
Yeah, I feel like that's an illogical assumption because the attack is against someone attacking queer theory, not necessarily like, and you are a homophobe or a transphobe by the very nature of attacking queer theory, right? You see what I'm saying?
I mean, sure. You just have to shit on me.
I'm not trying to shit on you. I'm just saying, like, I feel like the connection here is the attack against. If a pedophile touches a child,
like a parfait. There's layers.
Yeah, there's layers. There's layers.
Okay. Here's a great quote from Judith Butler.
Yo, who's the young fucking Stefan Molyneux in the crowd in the fucking classroom that goes, that's not an argument, that's a bumper sticker. Foucault has been accused by Guy Sorman of being pedophile in Tunisia. Faced with inaccuracies in his claims, Sorman later adopted his statement admitting having only a convergence of troubling evidence. In 1977, along with Sartre, Derrida, are you talking about when they signed a petition to French Parliament calling for the decriminalization of all consensual sexual relations between adults and minors? Yeah. It was a lot of people in there. It was a lot of French intellectuals. But yeah, Derrida, Sartre, and Foucault were all trying to get it decriminalized.
Okay, so Judith Butler wrote, so I keep adding this qualification. When incest is a violation, suggesting I think there may be occasions in which it's not. Why would I talk that way? Well, I do think that there are probably forms of incest that are not necessarily traumatic, and which gain their traumatic character by virtue of the conscience of social stain that they produce. Yeah, that's Judith Butler. That's one of the queer heroes. Okay, now we have for 500 we have the last one in the queer theory and pedophilia. The answer is queer theorist who has spoken out strongly against pedophilia.
Zero. Who is no one?
Who is no one? Not a single one. Because the entire thing is based on transgressing. Yeah, I know. Dear fucking God.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. Dear fucking God. Right. All right. So I figured I feel like that video was a good segue into two things. So the first, oh shit, there's like other random shit in here. It's going to take me a little bit to go through all the documents that I have. So give me just a moment. We want to look now at, I don't even know what the fuck this is. I have a bunch of stuff in here. Hold on. Let me see what this is. This page doesn't exist anymore. Interesting. Well, one of the videos that I had is already deleted. That's funny. So the next thing that I want to get into is...
Well, we do have a reaction real quick.
It depends on what it is, or I'm not going to do it.
It's short.
Okay, well, it still depends on what it is, because if it's relevant...
Yeah, it's a reaction to what we just watched.
Okay, all right. So, sure, we can do that. That's fine. You can't. Okay, this is... I'm not trying to make this a comedy event. Like, this is a serious topic. Like, I'll watch this, but like any more reactions after this that are like, because you already spent the points, any more reactions after this that like aren't in line with the topic, like I'm just gonna ignore.
Yeah, they're being cocooned just like the others.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
All right, we've got 7 canisters of CN20. I said we roll them in there and nerve gas the whole fucking nest.
That's worth a try, but we don't even know if it's going to affect them.
Look, let's just bug out and call it even, okay? What are we talking about this for?
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Fucking A.
Ho, ho, ho.
Fucking A. Why don't you put her in charge? All right, so let me actually grab there. I have two versions of this document. One is searchable, but this one's easier to read. Some of the infographics in this one are a little bit off. So, two of the things we want to look at. The first one I want to look at is, I believe, is page 18 of the document. Now, this is 1984, not the book in that regard. But I will link both of these to you guys in the chat. Now, this is portions of Thinking Sex, 1984, which is the foundational document for all queer and not intersectional, but for queer theory. Okay? So, study time. Everyone, is it... The law is ferocious in maintaining the boundary between childhood innocence and adult sexuality. Rather than recognizing the sexuality of the young and attempting to provide for it in a caring and responsible manner, our culture denies and punishes erotic interests and activity by anyone under the local age of consent. The amount of law devoted to protecting young people from premature exposure to sexuality is breathtaking. So then she goes into the idea of like, Romeo and Juliet laws needing to be existing between like, a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. They're forbidden to see books, movies, or television in which sexuality is too graphically portrayed. It is legal for young people to see hideous depictions of violence, but not to see explicit pictures of genitalia. Sexually active young people are frequently incarcerated in juvenile homes or otherwise punished for their precocity. What?
Zoom in so they can see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Adults who deviate too much from conventional standards of sexual conduct are often denied contact with the young, even their own. Custody laws permit the state to steal the children of anyone whose erotic activities appear questionable to a judge presiding over family court matters. Countless lesbians, gay men, prostitutes, swingers, sex workers, and promiscuous women have been declared unfit parents under such provisions. Members of the teaching professions are closely monitored for signs of sexual misconduct. In most states, certification laws require that teachers arrested for sex offenses lose their jobs and credentials. In some cases, a teacher may fined merely because an unconventional lifestyle becomes known to school officials. Moral turpitude is one of the few legal grounds for revoking academic tenure. The more influence one has over the next generation, the less latitude one is permitted in behavior and opinion. The coercive power of the law ensures the transmission of conservative sexual values with these kinds of controls, overparenting, and teaching. So she deems that like prostitutes and people that are sex workers, they're being denied their right to children. And of course there's some issues with homosexuality at the time that I think are legitimate here. But being a prostitute, hanging around Johns, is obviously a dangerous situation for a child. Not just sexually, but physically.
It's not a good environment for children at all.
Figure 9.1 Figure 9.1 diagrams a general vision of the sexual value system. According to this system, sexuality that is good, normal, and natural should ideally be heterosexual, marital, monogamous, reproductive, and non-commercial. It should be coupled, relational, within the same generation, and occur at home. It should not involve pornography, fetish objects, sex toys, or of any sort, or roles often other than male and female. Any sex that violates these roles is bad, amoral, or unnatural. Bad sex may be homosexual, unmarried, promiscuous, non-procreative, or commercial. It may be masturbatory or take place at orgies, may be casual, may cross generational lines, and may take place in public, or at least in the bushes or the baths. It may involve the use of pornography, fetish objects, sex toys, or unusual roles. So when we look up the word generational, right? In this chapter alone, it appears 6 times. And within reference to cross-generational, she's talking about individuals of extreme age differences. And that, like, there's something wrong with us as a society for not normalizing, let's say, a 40-year-old and a 20-year-old being together, or other things like that. And of course, you already heard the other quote from the video where she is talking about boy love from the larger text. This is just one specific text that is pretty famous from her. It's really difficult to say her if you see a picture of her, because Gayle Ruben, I for like the longest time, I thought Gayle Ruben was a guy. I didn't know that Gayle Ruben was a lesbian. As a matter of fact, just to meme a little bit while we're having fun. That's Gayle Ruben right there. I just thought Gayle Ruben was a dude.
That's, you know what? That's fair, I think.
So it was wrong of me to have sex with a woman that was... Aquafina, are you fucking... How dense are you? Are you like, you're trying to Kathy Newman me right now? Nobody said there's anything wrong with you having someone 11 years older than you. Technically speaking, cross-generational could be 1 year. Right? Like if you're born in 1984 and your partner's born in 1983, that's technically cross-generational. Okay, no, we're talking about someone who explicitly and multiple times advocates for boy love in the Greek and Roman Empire, who talks about how it's transgressive to have cross-generational sex and things of that nature. These are the founding documents of queer theory. But of course, like, you know, when I say critical age theory is here, right? When I say, like, okay, you know, it's the next step. You know, seeing someone, you know, hearing about Judith Butler, you know, today, kind of like passively accepting incestuous relationships, you know, hearing about Foucault getting rid of age of consent, you know, and Derrida and things like, and Sartre, you know, hearing the quotes from Gayle Ruben and things like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, this is a push that's coming, right? Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, you know, that, like, age of consent laws are going to be under attack soon, right? This is just saying that, like, the crazy radicals have done what crazy radicals have done multiple times. So obviously we're going to need a lot more than that. So let's look at some things that are happening, like, today. Let's go to a video first. I think we've all seen, or at least heard of this from Libs of TikTok. This is a high school classroom. It's a high school classroom.
Stop calling them that. You're not allowed to label people like that. What? Stop it, Diego. Yeah, no, we're not going to call them that. We're going to call them MAPs. No. Minor attracted persons. No. So don't judge people just because they want to have sex with a 5-year-old.
right? So this
That's
is
a great reason to judge somebody, I think.
right. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you know, there's that little bit, right? Like, you know, that's happening to a certain extent. But of course you see something like that and you're like, okay, but like that's an isolated incident, right? Does anybody remember Desmond is Amazing? Now I can't show most of the videos of most of the videos of Desmond is Amazing are videos that I can't show, right? Because they would violate Twitch's TOS, because they would be Desmond in drag dancing in strip clubs and getting money provocatively for grown men and women, right? So let me show you something from Desmond is Amazing and the way that the media in Hollywood propped up this individual. Now, this is an 11-year-old boy that does drag shows and strips for money regularly. And of course, now Desmond is Amazing is, you know, 15, but is still doing the drag show kind of circuit. This is Desmond is Amazing throws cute shade at RuPaul's drag queens. I can show this one. This one doesn't violate Twitch TOS.
Hilarious. And I love how she's always shading people. Although I shaded her. You need to get a real fan. Hi, I'm Desmond's Amazing, and I'm going to answer this LGBT quiz. Every time I score a question right, I get a point, but the points don't really matter. Why do points even have to exist? I'm ready. Number 1. Who was eliminated in Season 1, Episode 1 of RuPaul's Drag Race? Victoria Porkchop Parker. I don't really know much about her. Who did Katya...
Look at this graphic.
Parker. I don't really know much about her.
Exploding hearts of cute shade for the 11-year-old drag queen.
Who did Katya impersonate on All Stars 2 Snatch Game? Katya impersonated Bjork. No. It was fabulous. What is Season 10's Queen Aquaria' birth name? Can I get a Wikipedia? Is it Italian? The initials are GP. I don't know. There's plenty of Italian names. I give up.
Starts with Gio.
Giovanni? Lanco?
Ready?
Wait,
that was in your chair.
Palindromia? Aquarius style is very fun and glamorous. How long have RuPaul and Michelle Visage know each other? Since the 1980s or the 1990s. But I don't know how many years. Attitude. It's rude.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, the most replayed version is Desmond throwing cute shade and calling someone rude. But here we go. Right here.
RuPaul's other besties are Todrick Hall, Ross Matthews, and Carson Kressley.
Do you like Todrick Hall?
Yeah, I was in it, and it was in his music video, Boys Wear Pink, and I got to go to LA for only 2 days. Name 5 Chicago queens.
It was in his music video, and I was only in LA for 2 days.
Aw, how sad. Only 2 days.
And then we'll watch this real quick.
Dixon, Kimchi, Mystique Summer Madison's Sonique, Monica Beverly Hills, Peppermint. Oh wait, no, she's from New York. What season were they in? Fifi.
So I don't really want to watch any more of this. But on top of that, this is the tamest video I can find of Desmond is Amazing. Most of the videos are of him performing drag shows and stripping for adults and being celebrated. Right? This is from, a gay organization, Them, with 186,000 subscribers. Right? But this is from 2018. But I mean, I want to show that there's more than just an individual teacher being crazy, right? Just kind of like give a context of where we're at. We've seen this before, and I think this shows a nice intersection between these two, and why I'm saying that this is tied to the critical gender studies portion of this. Now, this is Children's Hospital of Chicago interviewing a 13-year-old trans male to female child on hormone replacement therapy. Jupiter 13.
I think one thing that
And this is the clothing that they decided to present this child, this 13-year-old child in.
probably should be explained to a lot of people is you're never like too young to know about this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like it's something that people should be taught, like, especially at a young age, because it's easier to learn that way, and that way it's something you've always known. And I feel like a lot of people think that, oh, my kids are going to be around trans people, they're going to want to be just like them. Well, maybe it's, like, a good thing for people who don't know that they're trans to be around trans people so they can get that advice, they can help understand themselves better. And I feel like it's a good thing for just people to, like, they don't just for them to know about this stuff because it spreads awareness.
So I wanted to show that there is kind of, let me put it on lo-fi because I don't feel like this chill fucking EDM music is really appropriate for the conversation we're having.
Music.
So I wanted to just show a couple of things, right? I wanted to show a couple of things that kind of like give the impetus to like, this needs to be investigated. Now, if you were here earlier, you saw us go over, if you were here in another portion of the stream, you may have seen this already. I'm not going to go through the whole document. I'm just going to go through kind of the conclusion and explain a little bit of what's happening. So this person, Anna Sparman, right, is the head of child studies, deputy head of Department of Child Studies at Linköping, I don't know how to say that, university in Sweden. Right, so this isn't a random nobody. This is a person that is like, you know, in a position of authority in the university. Here's a real question. How do we deal with a generation of people who can't logic? Who fucking knows, man? So now what she is doing is she is looking at two different pieces of sex education and stating why the idea of teaching children that they have no spaces that shouldn't be touched or that they should be ashamed of, and that it's okay to talk to their parents or somebody and like let them know of something happening. That's bad. What's good is sexual exploration and you know, and this is kind of where like I first came into contact with a specific definition, which was sexual citizenship. That was like, man, I've got to dig into this deeper, right? And I promised you guys that I would dig into this deeper, so I have. Now, one of the really important things about this, I'm going to skip this for a second and we're going to go to the conclusion. We're going to read the conclusion. The tension created by placing these booklets next to one another can be expressed through how and what child sexuality is positioned against. Adult or child sexuality. Well, Save the Children Sweden divides the child's body into extra sensitive areas in need of protection. This is the bad one, right? The good one. SRHR promotes an exploratory, curious child who wants to know more about their own body. This in turn creates two distinct versions of the child: the inept child at risk and the able, empowered child. Both booklets are thus political documents that expect different actions from children and adults. While SHRH enables children as both producers and consumers of sexuality. You'll see this again, producers and consumers of sexuality, because the sexual citizenship is tied into the evils of Marxism in a lot of their literature. Save the Children Sweden's point of departure turns child sexuality into a commodity for adults. Two political versions of child sexuality are thus upheld by different ontologies of the child, adult, and sexuality and how they relate to one another. The question here, though, is, can children in any sense legitimately be regarded as sexual citizens? So the question is, does sexual citizenship, which she doesn't really define, by the way, which is on purpose. This is something written for other people to understand. But she wants to know, does it apply to children? If we go along with SRHR's and the World Health Organization's definition of sexuality, and I want to point out, sexual citizenship is a term that is widely adopted by the United Nations now, which will also 100% be a part of UNESCO's curriculum in terms of education for children. Mark my fucking words, you get school choice, and this shit will be in every fucking classroom 110%, and they will make sure it doesn't matter what you do, unless you homeschool your children, they will be ensuring the sexual citizenship of your children. And groomer won't be an ironic slur anymore. It will mean that the teachers are literally grooming your children to be sexually active in the community. And the ideas that age are just weird boundaries that conservatives put up that aren't real.
And it's moving in that direction slowly but surely. Although it doesn't feel all that slow anymore, does it?
Not after tonight. I got a lot more stuff to show. If we go along with SRHR and the World Health Organization's definition of sexuality as incorporated into life and being a human being, sexuality turns out to be both a private wonder and a way to belong in society. In this way, sexuality blurs the boundaries between the private and the social. The problem with children is, how do we give and protect both their individual and collective rights? The individual right not to be abused and the individual right to explore their sexuality, and their collective rights to physical closeness, warmth, a sexual language, pleasure looking, a positive sex education, and pride in one's own body. What I am asking is, how can children be given both negative rights protection from and positive rights access to when it comes to sexuality? What needs to change? This person is explicitly saying that children have a right to explore their sexuality, and they have a right to sexual language, and that they have a right to physical closeness and physical warmth from other bodies, and they have a right to pleasure looking, not pleasure seeking within of themselves, but playing and exploring with each other. That children must be sexualized, otherwise it is a violation of their rights. We need to teach stoicism and virtue ethics. I actually believe virtue ethics and stoicism is probably the better way to go, even though I disagree with much of it in terms of my philosophy, because it's a much easier branch of philosophy to teach. I don't know how corruptible it is, though. It'd be an interesting experiment. I would prefer to teach, one of negative rights and the idea that positive rights don't exist in a libertarian philosophy, but fair enough. It seems as though a dark view of children and sexuality has arisen since the political changes of the 1980s. Our own contemporary worries about the omnipresent pedophile limits the case for sexual citizenship for children because it refutes the political space and agency that needs to be created for this to happen. To move on, we need, for example, to avoid a rhetoric in which we allow the notion of the child carrying the responsibility for resolving abusive adult sexuality. Children will always need both protection and emancipatory freedom. And that is why there is no easy solution to save the children /SHRH gap. In spite of this, we need to place our trust in a shared and common humanity, just as was the case historically when women's and gays' sexual citizenships became accepted and established. This person is doing everything they can to try and sexualize your children and trying to morally shame you if you won't, because you're the one infringing upon their liberties as humans. They're fucking children. They do not have full personhood. That is why they have guardians appointed to them to protect them from the dangers of the world and predators. And this person wants to strip away those protections as a means of sexualizing your children, and then wants to have the moral high ground while doing so.
Disgusting. It's really creepy.
I can't believe someone had the balls to write that out. I mean, wow, this is insanity. All right, so the World Health Organization's definition of sexuality. I think that's an important thing to look at here, right? So what is sexuality as defined by the World Health Organization? right? Because I think definitions matter, right? And I think one of the things that you see the left constantly do is try and water down and change definitions so that they can infiltrate those spaces and try and obfuscate everything that it is that they do. So how have they changed the definition of sexuality at the World Health Organization? Sexual health cannot be defined, period. So instead of giving a vague definition, the World Health Organization has embraced the idea that sexual health is an undefinable, unknowable, vague concept. So don't worry, just listen to our consequentialist analysis on outcomes, but understand that the boundaries, they openly admit, don't exist whatsoever because they can't give you a definition. Despite being the World Health Organization, they can't give you a definition of sexual health. They won't even try to. Sexual health cannot be defined, understood, or made operational without. Oh, so there's a caveat. So now we can define it. Without a broad consideration of sexuality. Now we have sexuality in the definition of sexuality, which underlies important behaviors and outcomes related to sexual health. So now we have a definition of sexuality and a definition of sexual health in the definition of sexual health, while stating that it can't be done or defined unless we utilize the circular definition. The working definition of sexuality is this: ... or ellipses, right? This is a much larger document, but let's take this little section. A central aspect of being human throughout life encompasses sex, gender identities and roles, sexual orientation, eroticism, pleasure, intimacy, and reproduction. Sexuality is experienced and expressed in thoughts, fantasies, desires, beliefs, attitudes, values, behaviors, practices, roles, and relationships. While sexuality can include all of these dimensions, not all of them are always experienced or expressed. Sexuality is influenced by the interaction of biological, psychological, social, economic, political, cultural, legal, historical, religious, and spiritual factors. So the definition is sexuality is literally everything and nothing. And it can be some things and not other things. They have no definition for sexuality whatsoever. It's intentionally vague and open-minded so that they can let the philosophy do whatever it is that they want to do at the World Health Organization. Very quick thing that we're going to look up real quick is if you just type in United Nations and you type in sexual citizenship, you will find tons and tons and tons of things from all over the United Nations documents in every faucet embracing sexual citizenship that is embraced here in this article. And often you will also find those things at the World Health Organization. Okay? So what the fuck is sexual citizenship, right? I feel like I've talked about this term a lot and like it sounds scary, right? But maybe it's like an innocuous thing and I'm just being crazy, right? Like maybe I'm reading into it. So the best definition I found is from a portion of studies. So let's start with this document that I have. Don't ask me how I got it. Now, what this document is a booklet of multiple studies. Okay? Youth sexuality and sexual citizenship. Now, there's a ton of editors. The biggest thing that you need to know is that this booklet was paid and this research was paid by the Australian government. Don't ask me how I got it. Falls off the back of the truck. Yeah, you got it. This is paid for by the Australian government with Australian tax dollars. Okay? So liberal democracies are paying for this research. Sydney, Australia, most of them. Okay? So let me scroll through this. I want to make sure. So what are the names of some of these studies? Of course, it was my government. Right, your tax dollars. When you went to work, you paid for this. Your money was taken out of your fucking paycheck to go towards these studies. Okay? Family, kinship, and citizenship change in continuity in LGBTQ lives. Queer interruptions. Policing belonging in the carceral state. That doesn't sound too innocuous. Reimagining, reclaiming, and renaming. Lawrence, Larry King, and too muchness. Complicating sexual citizenship through the embodied practices of a queer trans student of color.
Wait, I think that's the guy from the Lincoln scandal, the Lincoln Credit Union.
I don't know. I didn't read all these fucking studies. It's a 72-page document. I was doing shit today.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, like, that's interesting that they. It's
Little Bits goes Mark for president 2025.
Pass.
Beyond cultural racism, challenges for an anti-racist sexual education for youth. Regulating sexual morality, the stigmatization of LGBT youth in Hong Kong. Divergent pathways to inclusion for transgender and intersex youth. Sexuality's education and sexual citizenship, a material approach. Constraints and alliances, LGBTQ sexuality in the neoliberal school. 20 years of cyberqueer, the enduring significance of the internet for the young LGBTIQ plus people. Taking off the risk goggles, exploring the intersection of young people's sexual and digital citizenship in sexual health promotion. Queer youth refugees in the pursuit of the happy object, documentary, technology, and vulnerability. Young LGBTQ teachers work in sexual citizenship in contradictory times. Gay, famous and working hard on YouTube influencers, queer micro-celebrity publics, and discursive activism. Mediating aspirant religious sexual futures in God's hands. Enabling fluid forms of sexual citizenship, navigating the presence and absence of queer sex in skins. Some teachers are homophobic, you know, because they just don't know any better. Students reimagining power relations in schools. The proliferation of gender and sexual identities, categories, and labels among young people, emergent taxonomies. This book is one of several outputs from the Belonging and Sexual Citizenship Among Gender and Sexual Minority Youth, Queer Generations Research Project, which was supported by the Australian Government through the Australian Research Council's Discovery Projects funding scheme. We got to go past the forward. So I'm going to read something from the first article because they have a really good breakdown of it. But give me a minute to go through all this shit. Oh, fuck. Hold on. But right off the bat, right? Like, you can kind of read that and think, why the fuck are tax dollars in a democracy funding this? Well, that's how tax dollars eventually work, is ideological capture. Someone financed all that? No, the Australian government financed that. So we're going to read from Youth, Sexuality, and Sexual Citizenship, an Introduction. We're going to go to... Jesus Christ, sorry about that. Is it Sexual Citizenship that I wanted to read from? Here we go. I think I need to read this too, because I think this is what I was looking for. It's a really good kind of like understanding of the idea. Obviously a handout to some crony in their government. Can you DM me this document over Discord? I needed to deride my real life leftist friends. Yeah, I mean, learn to use Sci-Hub, people, but DM me in Discord. That way I'll like get the notification and I'll remember. Sexual citizenship, broadly defined, refers to sexual claims of belonging, It considers both the intimate and sexual aspect of a person, together with aspects of their identity in their participation or lack thereof in the rights and responsibilities of being a citizen. So what this document is about to show is it's about to tie in gender, race, cultural aspects, and capitalism all into a nice bow that intersects with sexual citizenship to make sexuality and gender and identity all part of a political movement. And that this pertain, and so that what they can do is they can tie all of these things together in a web of kind of leftist jargonous bullshit, right? And what this web allows them to do is to use words that are essentially meaningless and are kind of like amorphous claims to large things as a means of tying them to a bunch of several other things. You give them the Amazon link? Oh, it's funny. Maybe Christian nationalism isn't so bad. It's fucking better than some of this shit, as much as I hate it. But the lesser of two evils is still evil. So, understand that this is going to get confusing, and it's done so intentionally so that they can obfuscate many of the pedophilic things that I've already shown you. That we've seen from Judith Butler, that we've seen from Gayle Ruben, that we've seen from Foucault and Derrida, we've seen from their foundational texts, but also we're seeing played out now. And now they're doing it and wrapping it in a nice bow about rights and freedom and tying it to all of these other intersections so that we can be anti-capitalist and we can be anti-hierarchical. But the problem is that age is one of those hierarchies that they want to abolish. And they want sexual liberation for children. David Evans is a big important name here, right? Because he's kind of the guy that's putting this forward, but also a big proponent. Wouldn't surprise me if this guy was a bit of a pedo. You want me to give them the real link on your channel? No, I want you to link what you just linked, and then I want you to link sci-hub.se and say that the two are completely unrelated little bits. I like how Little Bits broke character for a minute. Like, dog, you want me to do that on your channel? Oh, apologies. Oh, sorry. So let's go forward. The concept was perhaps first coined in the early 1990s by David Evans, who argued that sexual citizenship is materially constructed within capitalist societies by the relationship between the state, sexual morality, and the market. So again, we have just the Marxist drivel that's coming forward, right? But it's always how it is, right? So the idea now is that sexual citizenship is kind of a definition of how sexuality is inexorably tied to your purchases, your purchasing power, your ability to thrive within a capitalist society, as well as state regulations, etc. Which isn't necessarily untrue, but it's such a vague and amorphous term that comes with a lot of baggage. More recently, Rasmussen and colleagues have considered how sexual citizenship rests on shifting bodies and shifting embodiments, a perspective which highlights the many exclusions inevitably associated with the notion of sexual citizenship. Which is to say, non-binary transgender people and different, taking on different gendered kind of roles as you choose, different pronouns, etc., like complicates this mess. The historian and sociologist Jeffrey Weeks has written that sexual citizenship shares features with other claims to citizenship, including enfranchisement, inclusion, belonging, equity, and justice, tempered by new responsibilities. So we got all the Marxist check boxes, and now we want to include a vague definition of sexuality in this. It lies as the fateful juncture of private claims to space, self-determination, and pleasure, and public claims to rights, justice, and recognition. Week highlights a major tension between the sexual as a private and often personal domain and citizenship with its connotations of the public, implying involvement and participation in rights and recognition struggles within the wider community and society. So again, we can divorce sexuality from the actual acts of sex, which is a private domain, right? And now we want to tie it to the transgender community, to the gay community, to their ability to be out and open, and like make it an issue of like rights violations from the state, et cetera, right? So all of these things are now included in sexual citizenship as a means of like, as a means of giving a vague, over kind of arching idea of the of sexuality as it ties into the politics of everything. You good over there, Mark?
Oh yeah, just loving all the nightmare fuel.
Sexual citizenship's focus on rights claims has, however, had a patchy history, and the concept of citizenship has been questioned as being an imposition from the West that is inflexible and othering. You can't make up this shit. Even that's a problem. It's not vague enough, right? The left is saying like, no, it's you know, Eurocentric or whatever. Legal scholars Kessler and Robson argue that the concept places citizenship over personhood, that excluding members of our own communities and allies. A line of argument Richardson summarizes as a focus on the violence of sexual citizenship. In a more radical move, Plummer argues for the use of the term intimate citizenship, which he sees as implying not one model, one pattern, one way, or one voice, but rather, quote, a plurality of public discourse and stories about how to live the personal life in a late modern world where we are confronted by an escalating series of choices and difficulties around intimacies. It's a giant word salad to say that anything that is personal, intimate, or political now all falls under the idea of intimate citizenship, and it's a rights issue, and we can kind of use this term as another layer of bullshit in terms of having these conversations. This more individual and person-centered approach aligns with geographer Michael Brown's plea for a concept of sexual citizenship, quote, grounded in a caring, relational, and grounded notion of obligation, and one sensitive to the political ecologies of disease. Stupid. According to R.L. Wilson, opponents of sexual, reproductive, and women's rights, this is where it gets sneaky, right? This is where you begin to see the political situation, right? And why do they need all of this smoke? Why do they need this smoke screen and this vagueness and this like all-inclusive thing, right? Well, here's what you're going to see now. According to R.L. Wilson, opponents of sexual, reproductive, and women's rights strategically charge sexual rights advocates with, quote, ethnocentrism and cultural imperialism, promoting the breakdown of the family, hence the erosion of community, peoples, and nations, and, quote, exacerbating materialistic individualism, end quote. Further, as Angela Wilson points out, quote, if articulated outside a liberal democratic frame, the claim to human rights has little purchasing power. Deployment of political signifiers make the most strategic sense when this happens within the frames that give them meaning. So again, you're seeing the research already take on a praxis element, right? We need to make this more palatable to other cultures, and we need to recognize how this can be utilized in a weapon against those that we politically disagree with. This isn't research. This isn't even politics. This is strategy for implementing their belief system and their Marxism. Acknowledging such critique, political scientist Carol Johnson and sociologist Tara Lurie have argued for a wider, more fluid, and inclusive interpretation of sexual citizenship so as to be adaptable to, quote, non-Western social and political constructions, and which moves outside the, quote, market-driven cultures of sex as property and legal entitlement, end quote, which is just more Marxist garbage for everything I don't like has to be tied to capitalism and property. It can't be that, like, you know, sexuality is a personal, intimate thing. Nevertheless, Sexual citizenship is useful in that it recognizes and situates individuals in society as intrinsically sexual. It's really important. Sexual citizenship shows that everyone is intrinsically sexual as a being and that they're connected to everything through their sexuality, thereby contesting more traditional notions of citizenship that have relegated the sexual to the private and the domestic in favor of new possibilities. The division between socioeconomic and sexual issues is false. So now, right? Now sexuality must be tied to capitalism, socioeconomic status, right? And that everyone is a sexual being, and that any form of trying to keep something private or trying to keep something in the home or trying to, let's say, I don't know, like not have public displays of affection or anything like that are rights violations against the individual, and that everything political is also sexual. And it's using that to hammer so that any time, like anything political, any political act must now be tied to sexuality. And that is a dangerous fucking thing. Their interdependency is reaffirmed, quote, in domesticity, reproductive politics, and the split between public and private, fantasy and action, male and female. In a related vein, David Bell and John Binney write, we consider all citizenship to be sexual citizenship, as citizenship is inseparable from identity and sexuality is central to identity. Who you are, what gender you are, what you call yourself, what your pronouns are, how you act, what is sex education with children, what do children do, all of it and every bit of it must now be intrinsically and deeply rooted in sexuality. Everything is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. Yeah, exactly. No, but it's all politics. This isn't about that. This is about tying everything to power dynamics and politics. And while sexual citizenship's basis in rights language may be a source of contention, it is also filled with the potential that has seen it successfully adopted in studying various non-Western contexts, from Africa to Asia. The anthropologist Sally Engel Mary has called the process of appropriating global ideas of human rights and translating them into local terms of vernacularization, and successful efforts to vernacularize concern for sexual, reproductive, and women's rights can be found across a variety of contexts. So again, this is all praxis and language manipulation, and they admit that it's praxis and language manipulation in order to push a communist or Marxist ideal in every vein of life. Now, this must be interconnected to sexuality at every level for every person at every interaction. Have I considered giving this information to larger outlets so that it can be brought to light to the general public? I mean, I can sit. This is publicly available. Like, this isn't secret. This is paid for by the Australian government. It's just a matter of putting it all together in a form of presentation.
Which, I mean, is doable.
An especially convincing account of the relationship between sexual citizenship and sexual rights can be found in the work of Diane Richardson, who highlights three main ways in which sexual rights are understood within sexual rights discourse: as conduct-based, rights to various forms of sexual practice in personal relationship; as identity-based, rights through self-definition and development of individual identities; and as relationship-based, rights within social institutions, public validation of various forms of sexual relations. I don't know how public validation is somehow a right, but these people are fucking insane. All are interconnected. The right to sexual pleasure, Richardson says, quote, is complex and inextricably linked to other rights of citizenship. For example, it is difficult to envision that it would mean to speak of women's rights to sexual pleasure without at the same time recognizing rights that enable women's control over their sexuality and reproduction. So now, laws against abortion are actually laws against sexual pleasure, and that it's actually a rights violation, not only of their right to their body in the ability to choose when they have children, but it's also a violation of their right to orgasm.
Jesus, how many rights do you have?
You have all the rights and you have none of the rights. Everyone has all the rights, and we'll just throw all of them at the wall and see which ones stick.
I guess.
In her more recent writing, Richardson encourages thinking more broadly about sexual citizenship. And the historic focus on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans communities in sexual citizenship literature and advocacy, she argues, narrow the lens of sexual citizenship in ways that direct attention away from thinking about groups of people whose rights of sexual citizenship may also be contested. For example, people with HIV and AIDS, post-trafficked women, refugees, migrant workers, and so on. Again, this is more praxis. This is all about politics. This isn't about research. This isn't about understanding. This isn't about discovering truth. This is about language games and about political power. And they admit it openly. The problem is that it's coded in such high academic language that nobody cares to fucking read, and then gets disseminated through the education process that people don't understand this shit. Conservatives don't even fucking know that this shit is going on. Hell, I didn't know some of this shit was going on until I deigned to fucking dig into the research for you guys and pulled out the shit that mattered and the shit that didn't matter.
Also, thanks for the follow, Good Nature.
I appreciate it. It may therefore be useful to think about citizenship more broadly as belonging, where rather than civic inclusion, social relations, and the practices of daily life inscribe citizenship status. Taking such a perspective as a starting point, we now turn to examine the thorny issue of youth sexual citizenship. So, if you read that and you came away more confused, I totally understand. Like you're not a good-natured simpleton. Okay? It's meant to be Marxist praxis. It's meant to tie sexuality to every form of political engagement. And it's meant to prove that everything is about power dynamics within a mythology where some people hold the superposition. And it's meant to be language games, as they themselves admit, as a means of pushing Marxist ideology onto people through language manipulation and politics by tying everything to politics. The personal is political, right? Now let's see what they have to say about sexual citizenship in youth. If controversy exists, so they're not even willing to admit that this might be controversial, which is funny. Yeah, thorny issue, what the fuck. With respect to youth, right? And so anybody that's just coming in, again, Australian government paid for this. And there's hundreds of citations in here. This is not an isolated crazy person pushing this. This is proof that this is a widespread thing in academia. But don't worry, I'll give you something with more citations. If you need a paper with 1,300 citations, that'll be later. If controversy exists with respect to youth rights and citizenship, as well as in relation to the concept of sexual citizenship itself, matters become more complex when it comes to the relationship between sexual citizenship and youth. Carrie Robinson has drawn attention to especially, quote, difficult citizenship that exists within this domain, and notions of childhood innocence trumping efforts to provide young people with an education about gender, sex, and relationships that is equitable, honest, evidence-informed, and fair. So already you're seeing them say that these weird, you can see them cast dispersion at the idea that there's this notion, this idea that's out there that that childhood innocence exists, and it's stopping us from being able to have equity, honesty, and sex education and relationships that's informed and fair. How do we get rid of that? How do we get rid of this stupid idea of childhood innocence so that we can educate children the way they need to be educated? More generally, Nicholas Rose, 1999, has written that childhood is one of the most intensely governed aspects of human existence. Ultimately, the realization of children's citizenship rights, be they linked to sexual citizenship or otherwise, exists in tension with the adult exercise of power to determine who does what, when, where, and why. So now we enter power dynamics into the situation of sexual citizenship as a means of oppression against children. We're not going to come out quite out and say that fully. That's what they're talking about. There's a small but growing body of conceptual and theoretical research describing young people's navigations of sexuality using citizenship frameworks. Robinson, for example, argues for the importance and relevance of sexual citizenship in children's and young people's lives as a matter of social justice. It's against social justice, and we must fight in social justice for sexual citizenship for children and to get rid of these notions of childhood innocence so that we can give them proper sex education. While Waits offers ways of thinking about the rights and obligations young people should have in relation to sexuality, specifically as it relates to age of consent legislation. I'm going to read that again for you. While Waits offers ways of thinking about the rights and obligations young people should have in relation to sexuality, specifically as it relates to age of consent legislation. I don't give a fuck if we're dropping views right now. This shit's important. Saleeki examines childhood sexualization in politics, academia, and the media, while Farrer has looked at the politics of sexual storytelling in Reform-era China. While these early signs of activity around youth sexual citizenship are encouraging, more existing writing remains limited in its scope, focusing on particular topics such as young people's lack of access to comprehensive, inclusive sexuality education, or more general issues such as challenges young people face in growing to become informed and responsible citizens capable of making independent decisions around sexual identity and well-being. There's a lot of jargon words for we need to indoctrinate your children into gender ideology, and it's a rights violation for against these children and their sexual citizenship to presume the idea of childhood innocence. They're our fucking kids, you fucking bigot. They belong to the community, not you, the parent, and how dare you protect them from us. There remains major gaps in understanding how young people articulate their own views of citizenship and belonging, their opinions concerning rights-based discourses, and what is most important to them. This is significant given shifting socio-political dynamics globally and the impact of these developments on youth life prospects. Important questions to be answered include: how are the meanings and values of citizenship changing, and how do young people position themselves sexually or not, sexually or otherwise, within the global citizenship matrix, whatever the fuck that means? Who do young people regard as the best translators, mediators, and arbiters of what counts as youth and sexual citizenship? In what ways might changing experiences of youth life alter the constituent elements of what we gather together to call citizenship? And in the increasingly post-nation state experience of life fostered by transnational knowledge flows and global ecological crisis, even if young people might still find some resonance in a claim to citizenship, what are they imagining they are becoming a citizen of? This is giant amounts of word salad about the ideas of asking questions for questions' sake, whilst denying the idea that they're obfuscating for seriously dangerous ideas and obfuscating the waters of sexuality in children. The situation with respect to belonging, recognition, and right to participation claims is especially problematic for LGBT youth whose opportunities and whose sexual and or gender identities and practices often differ from hegemonic ideals and whose lives are often made difficult by misunderstanding, prejudice, discrimination, and fear. Jesus Christ, Crown. The latter part of the 20th century saw an increasing acceptance of sexual and gender diversity, moving away from earlier historical understandings, which understood such diversity in a host of problematic ways, and then only in uneven ways around the world. In much of the majority of the world today, there remains deep hostility towards those who are gender and sexually different or diverse, be they adults or young people. 4 countries still retain the death penalty for homosexual acts between men, and many more. And Indonesia and Bermuda have recently taken steps to roll back the rights of LGBTQ citizens, a salient reminder that citizenship is not a fixed state. We could go on and on and on. This is simply an introduction about all of these studies and how they go into details into specific areas. And this is paid for, again, by the Australian government. This specific book is only cited 24 times, but I wanted to tie this towards state funding because I thought that that was important. And I also wanted to use the kind of introduction from this because it does a great job of like kind of encapsulating little hidden bits of knowledge that are kind of strewn out everywhere in these word salad essays. I've heard, yeah, right? Leftists are so obsessed with power it bothers them that they're not allowed to control other people's kids.
But to your people, freedom is just as essential as...
Yeah, they're real disappointed about that.
Yeah. So in that vein, let's take a little bit of a break here for a second before we get back into shit. And let me show you what these people look like. Again, over and over again, we have the famous person whose name I will not speak.
It's not that you...
Let me share this to Mark since I was on a PDF file earlier. Hilarious that I'm using PDF files while talking about this.
It is the height of irony.
So, what do these people look like? What do the vanguard look like when they adopt this wokeness? And how do they talk to your children? This is a major TikTok influencer, Jeffrey Marsh. Fuck it, I said his name. I'm sorry, their name, because they're they.
This is not a good look for the intro, by the way.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's... So let's see what these individuals, when they're talking to your children and how they feel about things.
It's not that you can't use they for one person. You use they for one person all the time. Someone left their wallet here. I hope they come back to get it, right? It's that you can't look at me and see my humanity yet. AKA bigotry, right? You don't believe us.
Yeah.
You can't look at us and see the they in the eyes.
I'm going to be real honest with you. I see the they in your eyes. I know what wide eyes psychopathy fucking looks like, and it looks like this.
I mean, personally, what I see is a big fuck off stamped on their forehead.
Yeah.
You don't believe us. You can't look at us and see the they in the eyes. So I want to give you a little practice so you can get over it. Look at me. Do you see that I am a they, them? Deep down to the core of who I am. Are you ready to respect us?
Sorry, I couldn't look at them. I couldn't look at they.
This is the beginning. I want you guys to know that gender ideology is the foot in the door to what's coming next, which I keep calling critical age theory. See if this is the article I'm looking for.
It's a pretty good term. I have to give you credit.
What did I put there? Oh fuck! I forgot to put the fucking. So, I don't give a fuck. I'll show Sci-Hub on this one. Actually, let me fucking not. So let's look at another piece of research. You should Urban Dictionary critical age theory. Yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. I'll write out an actual comprehensive definition. And use it in a sentence. So, what's this wonderful piece of cited research from Sex Education? Now, why am I using this article? Because this is critical pedagogy. This is a study looking at the differences between children's stories and sex education for young children and the way that it has morphed over time. Now, the title is From a Wonderful Story to the No-Nonsense Facts, Effect, Knowledge, and Sexual Citizenship in Pedagogical Texts for Young Children and Their Parents. Now, what is critical pedagogy, if you don't know, means education of your children, sex education for your children. This means the education of teachers in the School of Philosophy and how they are going to teach your children and how nurses are going to deal with your children and how your children are going to be indoctrinated or socialized by them. And it goes into a pretty detailed breakdown of all of it, but let's read the abstract and the conclusion. There's no real need to go into all of this. Yeah, Paulo Freire, but Paulo Freire, instead of class consciousness, and what we're now dealing with is age consciousness, sexuality consciousness, from gender to sex, and of course age. This paper performs a textual analysis on 3 popular children's picture books that describe the facts of life. It positions the books, published over a 60-year period, as components of a broader pedagogical apparatus incorporating texts, parents, children, and experts in particular spatial and temporal locations. It traces movements of effect, rationality, scientificity. I can't say, Jesus Christ. Scientificity. Scientificity? Is that how you say that? It sounds like a fucking made up way. Yeah, scientificity is one of those like pedagogical, like what is it, pedophilicism? It's like where they just like add new fucking suffix to words.
It's just another smokescreen and obfuscation.
And sexual citizenship. Thanks for the sub, man. I appreciate it.
Much obliged.
And sexual citizenship through and between the picture books, and considers, this is important, and considers how these textual components of the pedagogical apparatus construct young children as particular subjects and objects of knowledge in sex education. This is the subversion of the hierarchy of the adult as the arbiter of the discussion, and instead empowering the child to be the one that is knowledgeable within their own sexuality. This is the philosophy that is teaching teachers that are going into your schools as we fucking speak. Don't worry, I'll have more proof. I'm not fucking done yet. I could go through all of this, but we've had enough about that. I think you guys have a good concept of the bullshit that is the made up concept of sexual citizenship and what it is as a tool. This paper explores 3 popular sex education picture books to ask what sorts of subjects of knowledge are produced and how do representations of sexuality differ. Their position is part of a more complex pedagogical apparatus within which parents and children engage in sex education in historically and cultural specific moments. Remember, again, when you see pedagogical, that just means the way in which we teach children. It considers the extent to which each text gestures towards an emerging sexual citizenship for the child reader. The paper also considers the movement of effect through the texts. Some final issues to be considered include textual authority, representation, and effective mobility within and beyond the texts. Skipping ahead a little bit. Finally, and unsurprisingly, it is Harris's book that most overtly demonstrates sexual citizenship for children, of course, because it's the newest one. Young children have rights to knowledge and control over their bodies. And it's not the stork aims to extend their capacities for self-protection, responsibility, and appropriate sexual pleasure. Remember, these are young children that need to be informed of how to explore their bodies and sexuality. It provides a blueprint for achieving the normative, liberal, sexual values of contemporary Western culture. Oh yeah, no, it's grooming. In their own ways, Grunberg's The Wonderful Story of How You Were Born and Males, Where Did I Come From, also advocated appropriate sexual citizenship for children of their times. Grunberg's prediction that when children grow up and marry, they too will find a special closeness with their hearts and their bodies reflects the domestication and regulation of sexual pleasure of the 1950s, while males, adults cavorting in the bath and in bed, suggest a more pleasure-orientated ethos in the 1970s. However, these are crude gestures towards historical eras that are more complex and conflicted. It is also possible, despite their distinct historical locations, to consider all 3 books as part of the same broadly liberal project of bringing sexual knowledge to young children, and thus beginning to recognize them as sexual citizens. Each endeavors to incorporate effective dimensions along with other modes of knowledge in order to, as Lesko puts it, locate sexual knowledge within history, society, and individuals' lives and meanings. Here's the paper title if you want to look it up for yourself. From a Wonderful Story to the No-Nonsense Facts, Affect, Knowledge, and Sexual Citizenship in Pedagogical Texts for Young Children and Their Parents. Give me just a minute while I search for more.
Just scrolling through the large list you procured.
So this text right here, Rethinking Sexual Citizenship. If we go to, this is Richardson, right? Which one was I looking for on this? What part was this? Hold on, let me, on the specific part. Oh, okay, here we go. Got to go back up to the top. Give me just a second. This document has 1,284 published citations. It's almost 1,300 citations. So if you think this is like a weird corner of academia, it's not. This is deeply embedded in sociology and critical pedagogy. What the fuck? Is that the wrong one? Hold on. Why is that not coming up? Hold on. I might be grabbing the wrong one. Rethinking Sexual Citizenship. Is this the one that I'm looking for? Ah, here we go. Sorry, this is the one with 1284. This is just another lovely thing. Here, we'll read the abstract here before I go to the 1284. I apologize. I kind of slapped this together doing a lot of research, and the more I did research, the deeper down the fucking rabbit hole I went. Over the last 2 decades, sexuality has emerged as a key theme in debates about citizenship, leading to the development of the concept of sexual citizenship. This article reviews this literature and identifies 4 main areas of critical framing: work that contexts the significance of sexuality to citizenship, critiques that focus on the possibilities and limitations of mobilizing the language of citizenship in sexual politics, analyses of sexual citizenship in relation to nationalisms and border making, and literature that critically examines Western constructions of sexuality and sexual politics underpinning understandings of sexual citizenship. In order to progress the field theoretically, the article seeks to extend critiques of sexual citizenship, focusing on 2 key aspects of its construction: the sexual citizen subject and spaces of sexual citizenship. It argues for a critical rethink that encompasses a decentering of Western-centric focus in order to advance understandings of how sexual citizenship operates in the global North and South. I'm not going to go deep into this one. I just wanted to show you again that there's tons of research done in this domain. Tons of this is a literature review, right? Around all of these different articles that are engaged in this idea of sexual citizenship and tying sexuality and power dynamics to literally everything. But we want to get back to the groomers, right? That's what we're really here for. So, was it on it? Oh, it is. Hold on. Let me go back to my notes. Should be the number 6 one. So, looking for the 6th usage of this so that we can find this. Now, this is. Well, this is what it is. This is a book. This is a book that is has over almost 1,300 academic citations. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chapter 8. I'm going to read just a little bit of chapter 8 from this book. Embryonic Sexual Citizenship. Wow, one of the people who wrote the book also wrote a paper on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Wow, intellectual titans. I'm going to see if I can, there's not really much I can do in terms of like, there we go. There we go. Sorry about that. That'll make it make sense. Children as sexual objects and subjects, piano keys don't lock doors. Footballs don't have toes. Footballs don't have toes. And of course, cabbage heads don't have a mouth or a nose. And kids don't go with strangers, they never go with strangers. Quoted in Amos, 1986. Can children in modern societies be legitimately regarded in any sense as sexual citizens? Do they have sexual rights? Do they consume, or are they merely consumed sexual commodities? One of the most dramatic and increasingly dramatized aspects of the sexualization of modern societies has been the construction of children as grave objects of concern. Sexual innocence vulnerable to all manner of seductions. This pedagogization of childhood, initially as a distinct idyllic and asexual stage in pre-adult personal development, and later as a period of undirected latent sexual energy under siege from innumerable exploitative others, became broadly established with the bourgeois evaluation of the domestic realm to one of privacy, serenity, health, comfort, and cleanliness. Within this precarious innocence could, it was believed, be safely ensconced. No longer is the inner family world the moral superior to potential external corruptions, however, but is itself the home of sexual abuse. So, the claim here is that the home is full of sexual abuse. And because the home is full of sexual abuse, you'll see that the claim is that we need sexual liberation from children and their parents. Their abusers, feminists and professional welfare critics and manuals to instruct the abused and aid those employed to save them, and prominent media panics about external and most recently parental abuse. Childhood sexuality itself has largely been a taken for granted paradigm of the natural. However, the escalation of abuse scripts, pleas on behalf of children's rights and liberations in general, and more controversially on behalf of their capacity for self-determined sexual relations, has meant that it is no longer possible to confidently claim that children and childhood are unambiguously pre-social, asocial, pre or asexual. So the evidence is in, boys. Children are sexual beings, and we've got to deal with that with empowerment. Cross-cultural and historical evidence demonstrates clearly that the customary separation of childhood and sexuality and the protraction of childhood well beyond adolescence is socially constructed. The idea of development and sexual feelings and the idea that young children aren't sexual beings, that's just a social construct made up that is a mythology that is made up. This is what I'm fucking talking about. This is why it has the elements of critical age theory, is because it's denying the reality that exists in the world, that human beings develop over age, and instead calling that a mythology that is socially constructed, and which adults and powerful conservatives hold a superposition over children, and that it's an oppression of children, and they're going to tie this to a lack of sexual education that is needed for children, and tie this to blame the abuse of children and sex trafficking and all of these other things on the idea that we hold up this mythology that adults have domain in protecting children, and that children shouldn't be liberated sexual individuals. Yeah, it's fucking predictable. But this has 1,300 citations. This isn't just some random fucking article that I pulled out of nowhere. This is a major and foundational text to the movement. And it's calling the idea of child sexuality a social fucking construct. For example, as the cross-cultural data collected by Ford and Beach demonstrated, in even the most primitive and restrictive societies, some children engage in secret sex play. And where cultural values are less restrictive, children are found to freely engage in various sexual practices, in some instances beginning coitus by the age of 6 to 8, and where there are few virgins amongst those over the age of 10 to 11. Kinsley et al. Reminded us that earlier civilizations were well aware of the sexual capacities of at least teenaged youth. The Greeks and Romans had virtually no interest in childhood as something to be praised or as something free of sexual being. Achilles' intrigue with, I can't remember. I don't remember how to say that. It's Didymia. Well, yeah. I think A is AE, but that also makes an I sound. And anyways, by whom a son was born, had occurred sometime before he was 15. Acus had just passed 16 at the time of his love affair with Galatea. God, Chion was reputed to have had 1,000 suitors when she reached the marriageable age of 14. Helen was 12 years old when Paris carried her off from Sparta. Daphne was 15 and Chloe was 13. Historians have presented extensive evidence that protected innocent childhood is a relatively modern construct within Judeo-Christian culture. So now it's just this Christian socially constructed bullshit that 10 or 11-year-olds can't go around fucking people. And that they should be sexually liberated to begin coitus at the age of 6 to 8. That's your fucking kindergartner. And that sexuality once marked the end of childhood. The impatience of Juliet's family and of Romeo to make a woman of her will continue to seem acceptable to modern audiences until a convincing 12-year-old actress comes along. Juliet did not cause the frisson in Shakespeare's age that Lolita provokes in our own. Most famously, Aries has argued that within the sociability of the pre-capitalist machinery of alliance, children were integral participants in adult life. As soon as the child could live without the constant solicitude of his mother, his nanny, or his cradle rocker, he belonged to adult society. Likewise, by the age of 10, girls were already little women. It's the capitalism. Yeah, it's the capitalism and Christianity that destroyed the good old days when we were fucking 10-year-olds and 6-year-olds were fucking each other.
Well, then God bless capitalism.
Again, 1,284 citations throughout critical pedagogy and sociology. This is an incredibly well-respected piece of academic work.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, for people who aren't really familiar with that side of academia, like, how many citations is, like, average, would you say?
The average citation...
Like a decent paper. Something that's like actually useful.
The average citation in sociology is 0.9. The average paper gets less than one citation. It's
I don't even know
considered
how that works.
It's considered like really, really, really good and like a breakthrough piece of like important scientific success if you can get over 200. If you can get over 200,
and this is six times that.
Yeah, that's a really big deal. This is 6 times that. This proves that this is like a foundational piece of work for a field of study.
This isn't just some average mumbo jumbo here.
Yeah. And this is blatantly. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, of course, the average is not the mean, or the median, I should say. The median and the mean are far off from each other.
Okay, what's the median then?
I don't fucking know off the top of my head. I didn't prep that for this.
Fair enough. Not really a requirement. God, how could you have 2 energy drinks and then Fireball?
I mean, alcohol doesn't perk me up, so it's actually more of a counterbalancing effect.
If I have to choose between
it's like you had 4 Loko almost.
And another.
So.
Then I prefer not to choose at all.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What's left? What would really put the cherry on top of this entire presentation? What would really fuck with this and make it seem like a clear and present danger that I think that it is? What if I told you that not only is this in the hallowed halls of academia, but that this is also already being taught to teachers that are going to your school? That this
only in California, right?
No, in college. that this isn't just some random shit that is happening in academia that won't make its way down. Chapter 80 of college textbook, sorry, I forgot to search that, Introducing the New Sexuality Studies, 4th edition, but it's also in third and in the 2nd and 3rd edition. Okay. Children's sexual citizenship. So this is being taught to your teachers that are graduating college to teach your children sex education and be your kindergarten teachers and your middle school teachers and etc. This chapter examines the concept of children's sexual citizenship, its meaning and importance to children's health and well-being, to their agency, and to building respectful and ethical gendered and sexual subjects. Which is such a fucking creepy way of putting that. It gets worse. The precarious relationship between children and sexuality and its relevance to children's sexual citizenship is explored. Sexuality is widely considered in society as irrelevant or a danger to children. It is perceived as a signifier of being an adult. As such, some adults view sexuality as an aspect of adult life from which children need protection. Almost like that. If you don't, you're a fucking groomer. This essay argues that the Western discourse of, quote, childhood innocence, end quote, generally mobilized by adults to protect children, can work to undermine children's agency, their health and well-being, and increase their vulnerability to exploitation. The discourse of childhood innocence is often used to deny and regulate children's access to certain knowledge, particularly comprehensive sexuality education. Comprehensive sexuality education, which can be built on over the early years into adolescence, scaffolding children's learning. So scaffolding is a psychological concept of like, you know, you don't teach a kid like how to clean their room. You like teach a kid like how to put a toy in the box. So like you have to build more and more and more. You have to introduce them bit by bit. Provides a critical opportunity. It's always critical. Opportunity to address, amongst other issues, respectful and ethical relationships, gender and sexuality diversity, and sexual health and well-being, all relevant to children's and young people's sexual citizenship. So now this is an inversion of Think of the Children, and it's saying that childhood innocence is a myth and that we have to get the children as young as possible with scaffolding to train them to understand that they are sexual beings deserving of the rights of their sexuality and to be engaged sexually with others. And that it's actually the conservative notion that children should be protected from the sexuality of adults that's harming them from having good, comprehensive sexuality education. So that's kind of the end of what I wanted to get into. Mark wants to talk a little bit about a cult.
That's the end. That's all of it. Just that.
So I hope that you saw from my whoopsie. I hope that you saw from my presentation that I've shown today that the term sexual citizenship for children is essentially critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical theory applied to age and sexuality of children. That it is this amorphous idea that is using power structures and tying sexuality to literally every domain. That it is designed to destroy childhood innocence as a concept, and that it is advocating in highly cited papers by well-respected academics the idea of 6-year-olds fucking each other, and the idea that without the oppression of our conservative notions, most 10 or 11-year-olds would no longer be virgins, and they'd be a part of adult society, and that's perfectly acceptable.
I like to
And
follow
that this, I appreciate it, and that this is being taught to your teachers right now. That the World Health Organization and the United Nations, and guaranteed in UNESCO and several things, that when you start putting school choice and things like this, that the entire world, these world NGOs and non-governmental organizations, right, are utilizing this language as we speak as a means of going throughout the entire world and pushing and promulgating this radical ideology towards separating children from parents and making them sexual citizens as young as 10 and 11 years old. It's already here. The difference is that it's not in full force in the education system or in these LGBT spaces yet, or in these woke spaces yet, because it's in academia. It hasn't escaped yet. But follow the fucking pattern of critical legal studies, critical race theory, critical gender theory, and recognize that this is just the next fucking wave. And that the idea that grooming is ironic because it's about politics will no longer be ironic. The next phase that is already deeply embedded in academia and in government organizations is to fuck your children and to separate your children and to deny that your children have that you are punishing and hurting and harming your children if you try and protect their innocence and deny them their sexual liberation.
But it is still trapped in academia for now.
And in the United Nations and the World Health Organization. And, it just so happens to be that the World Health Organization recently hired a avid and well-known communist to head up their nudge department, which is designed to use psychology and work with governments to influence your behavior without you knowing it. Otherwise known as a communist at the World Health Organization works in tandem with governments to develop psyops to use against you.
Sounds like a fun ride. I'm glad I was in the military because I'm pretty resistant to brainwashing or propaganda.
So that's the end of that presentation. Accountable boy. Someone told me you're a libertarian now. I've always been a libertarian.
No, it just happened.
I've been a libertarian for like 10, 15 years. First, I was a leftist libertarian, then a minarchist, then an ANCAP.
I thought it was kind of an overnight thing, but...
What, like just a libertarian, not an ANCAP anymore? Yeah, I don't know who you were talking to. ANCAPs are libertarians. Libertarianism, as opposed to libertarian socialism or the de Jacques form of libertarianism, was invented by Rothbard. The term libertarian and anarcho-capitalist are synonymous, technically speaking, from the theory. All the other people that are calling themselves libertarian are just following in the vein of Rothbard's ideology, not taken to its fullest extent. And, and like the Lou Rockwell, and paleo libertarian strategy and shit.
We are the true inheritors of Murray's will.
Yeah.
Oh, well, buckle up, Sir Leviticus.
All right. What do you want me to share?
Start with the first link of X Family.
All right. All of this is appropriate to show on stream, right?
That's what I was going to warn you of. So all the nudity is blurred out in the scans, but I don't know if the subject matter and wording is going to be a problem.
Okay. Oh, I'm not showing that. I'm not showing the scans either. The scans are like Twitch, paste these on your nipples is still like a bannable offense, right?
There's no nudity. We'll check out a couple of the scans.
Yeah, you've shown me that before, and I was like, whoa, no, not showing that on stream.
Okay, well,
when we did Children of God.
Can we read some of the excerpts?
Yeah, I mean, you can read the excerpts, like. I don't know which ones you want to read, but go ahead. This is your show now, son.
Well, you're the one who can share a screen, so can you?
I'm not going to. Well, tell me which ones you want to share, silly.
God damn it. Well, there's the excerpts down below.
Oh my God, I fucking hate you right now, and you disorganized little fucker. All right, which ones?
I didn't realize you were going to do it this way.
Silly goose.
I mean, honestly, really, you could go with any of these. They're all doozies.
Okay, well, before we just read excerpts, can you explain what you're talking about?
All right. So, for the uninitiated, the Children of God, which is a cult that still exists, were founded in at the end of the hippie era, the hippie movement, which only lasted about 6 to 8 years, I think. So they start out by outreaching to hippies with peanut butter sandwiches, and it very, very, very quickly devolves into this weird fuck cult centered around this guy named, oh wow, I can't remember his name now for some reason.
Davidito or whatever?
No, Davidito's the boy. He is unfortunately the victim of all this, or
he's the one who killed himself.
One of them,
right? He's the main one who killed himself, or whatever. Like that went after somebody.
Yeah. Damn, why can I not find this guy's name? David Berg, I think. Yeah, it's his name's David. Anyways, so in the 80s, around 84, he starts to become obsessed with having an heir. And they also just randomly get into pedophilia. Like, just starts having this idea of a sexually liberated child. And so he has his wife.
Is this the fishing guy cult?
Yeah, the flirty fishing cult.
Yeah, the flirty fishing cult. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the tactics they used for recruiting was called flirty fishing, which was essentially just escort services and prostitution.
To bring them closer to God, right?
Yeah, to save it's to be fishers of men. They're doing you a favor.
The idea was that they were sharing wives. There was a lot of swinging, and there was like flirty fishing, and they would go and try and intentionally get rich, powerful men to protect them. And they would, but the entire idea, at least ideologically, was that love should be free, and it was attaching itself to the free love movement. But it was obviously just an insane fucking cult that was all over the fucking world.
Well, it started as being asexual, sexless, and then it just flips on its head. But one of the other things to consider about this is most of this affects the people close to him, like the upper echelon of the cult. A lot of the people further away tended to ignore that kind of stuff, because he very quickly has to start going into hiding frequently, and so he starts writing these Mo letters. He calls himself Moses David, and he's writing these Mo letters. And the Book of Davidito is kind of a collection of some Mo letters and actually putting together documentation of raising the new Messiah Davidito, his son Ricky Rodriguez, and a girl who I don't know her name, but they called her Davida, and she was supposed to be the first sexually liberated child. Davidito being the Messiah.
Yeah, and they put out a lot of pedophilic fucking videos of her dancing in the woods and shit. It is a creepy fucking cult. But I mean, it very clearly the cult leader thing went to him. You know what I mean? I think you see that sometimes with cult leaders where they're kind of normal. But they're kind of normal, at least a little bit. But they feed so much off of that narcissistic supply that they get crazier and crazier. In the beginning, he was just a charismatic cult leader, helping out the youth and the disenfranchised and moving around and, you know, giving sermons and shit. And then like you see his publications later and it's like heavy metal magazine cartoons of flirty fishing, like hooked through the stomach, like using women as sex objects to bring people to Christ. It was wild.
It's intense. So yeah, they chronicle the whole raising of Ricky, which basically starts off with him being molested from birth. In fact, after he's born, his biological father, maybe, because he's the product of essentially a week-long gangbang in a Portuguese or a Canary Islands hotel. And so they pick this one dude who works there. And after the baby's born, they invite him to come see the baby, and David Berg tries to get him to molest the infant in the crib. Fortunately, the guy's like, "You people are crazy," and he got the fuck out of there.
So the reason you wanted to talk about this, it's a wild fucking cult with a lot of crazy shit, is that you said that you saw like parallels between like some of this crazy literature that's coming out and like some of these new ideas.
Literally chapter 3.7.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I can't. Just a second.
I can't show it, but I'll...
No, it's fine. What I can show the wording, can I? Of the book itself?
Yeah,
There's
that's
no
what I was
pictures in
asking
the book.
if you could do.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. It was just I had the raid siren. Thank you so much for coming on over here, Florida Trailer Man.
Oh shit, my
Appreciate
bad.
the
I was
love.
looking at a different tab.
Okay, so you say 3.7? It just says sorry.
On the xfamily.org.
Oh, okay, sorry. xfamily.org. This is, what are you seeing?
It's the other one.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
So unfortunately, they're both called X Family. My apologies.
Yeah, you said 3.7, advocating sex with children. Chapter 45 entitled Bed Bugs. What do you want to read it? Is there like specific things you wanted to talk about, or do you want me to read it all out first?
I mean, I think it'll just be very enlightening overall.
I mean, all right, fair enough. So this is an insane sex cult leader, right? And I want to see if there's parallels here. Sex. Now, if I share with you some of Davidito's sexy experiences, will you try prayerfully and cautiously to benefit from the lessons learned and follow the Lord's leadership and possibly sharing the same kind of gentle love and fun without stumbling our little sheep? You know, some things have been omitted from this story simply because it's sometimes hard to explain the exact situation in words without your actually being there to experience it with us. Sex is a beautiful, God-given, wonderful part of the life we enjoy together, and we'd love to share it with you as long as you don't use it as an occasion to the flesh, and in some way that could actually harm or confuse the children. It's oftentimes the little ones who suffer through our big people mistakes. Holy shit, it is the same.
I was literally just like, I don't have to pick anything specific. Just grab something, go to any spot in this, and it will be the same.
How did this cult avoid getting Waco'd? Because they used flirty fishing against members of royalty, judges, lawyers, and things like that, and bribed them with sex and free love and propaganda into not really being fully involved in the cult, but in protecting them legally. The law did eventually come. Yeah, the law
spread out across the world.
Yeah, the law did eventually come out to them, for them, and they came for David Moses, but they didn't really come out for most other people. And so the cult died in some ways, but it still exists today with chapters. Yeah, we watched a documentary on this cult a month ago.
It's been
they didn't
longer
really
than a
go.
month ago.
Yeah, well, fair enough. But they didn't go into this, right? Like, and then we watched a little bit of the Ricky stuff, and it was just like, man, I don't want to see that shit again. Like that
But
poor abused
unfortunately-
child.
Unfortunately, it fits with tonight.
But yeah, no, section 16, like, it's like the idea is that like it's a liberating and beautiful experience for the children, which is exactly what we're seeing from Rogers, exactly what we're seeing from these authors and textbooks, is that this is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's less spiritually inclined towards like, you know, the charisma of like selling it so much, and it's done in a more Marxian lens, but it's like, oh no, it's the adults that abuse them, and it's us that are the problem, and they need to be sexually liberated. So we'll attempt to share a few of our experiences with you, not so on the 28th of April after. I'm not reading this shit, dude.
Okay, well, how about 3.8, attempting sex with a 14-month-old?
I'm not reading that either. Like, I'm not reading or showing that on stream.
Okay, well, I don't know that you'll be willing to read any of the rest of this then.
Yeah, no, I'm just like, I'm not, like, for obvious reasons.
Okay, what about resenting the sight of his mother in orgies?
Yeah, Mark.
I just want people to know some of these topic titles and like understand like this isn't, I'm not like fucking around, like it's all in there.
All right. Well, if you want to look up Davidito and the Children of God in terms of this shit and see some of the similarities in it, be my guest, but that is a rabbit hole I'm not fucking going down.
It's pretty brutal. You just have to look up the Book of Davidito.
Well, with that being said, I don't know that there's, I don't know that any other form of content that we have available tonight is really going to top that large thing. I'm going to put the presentation as a live stream on YouTube here in the next couple days, if you want to refer to it as again, or if you want to show evidence of that, so that there's more of a permanent record kind of like just some of those studies and things like that. So make sure you're on the YouTube. That way you can have that link or whatever. And if you want to show it to your friends, if they're like, that's crazy, and they don't believe you, or they don't think that this is like real, like maybe you can just like link them that video. I'm not over here trying to get you to like, you know, be like, share it, love it, we need subs, which we do. And I would love all of those things, but I think that's a good stopping point for tonight. I was researching since like noon or 1. And a lot of that shit I had already known or already had. And so I've been pretty much working on this for like 12 fucking hours today, and
it's been a real day ruiner.
It's been a real day ruiner. It really has. It's some dark shit to read through all of that child abuse stuff. So who's on right now? Because it's not too late, so we could probably raid some people we don't normally.
I only see Brant, Tiberius, and Bermuda.
Yeah, there's Blizza. Let's go say hi to Tiberius D. We don't often get a chance to raid over to Tiberius D. Does that sound good?
Right. Yeah, it's fine.
All right, so we're gonna go say hi to Tiberius D. Tomorrow when we come back, we're going to do we're going to talk about 9/11, obviously. We're going to, do a bit of that. We may or may not do philosophy reading. It just depends. If we do a philosophy reading, I want to read some Bakunin on the priestly class of the bureaucracy and how statism is a religion. He might be a commie fucker, but he wrote some good shit in that regard, for sure.
Crow, we're about to dip out. I don't think we're going to bring anyone on now.
But yeah, we're raiding out. But I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Make sure you're in our Discord or you're on Twitter. That's the only way you're going to get Go Live notifications. And please follow us, subscribe to our YouTube. We need we need YouTube subs bad, like really bad.
The lesser evil.
Did you have anything that you wanted to say before we got out of here, Mark?
If I have to choose between one
There's
evil,
something I was going to do one thing, but I'm trying to save that for a very specific instance. So I'll just say, biology can no longer ignore a sick joke.
I actually like that. It's actually kind of funny. You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.